So, Bree, what the fuck is happening with foundations?
Well, Foundations is now the non-course that is formally used to be called Foundations, but is
The
now
art
just
is formerly known as foundations.
exactly. Now this is just foundation. It's just a symbol. I feel like foundations just had to be killed because clearly it was not representing the essence of what I am trying to transmit. What's happening basically is just that, like, that wasn't it. And if it's not it, I won't do it. And so there's no pressure on me internally or externally to like do something that I've told somebody that I'm gonna do if it's not really right. And so as soon as it feels confined and like it's not about dancing, then I know that something's wrong with that particular frame. That frame is not really suited to the energy that wants to move through the frame. And so I'll just destroy that frame because it's coming from something compensatory, or it's coming from something that like I've referenced before and that maybe still feels like it's an old frame that at one time actually was the thing that was right for what was coming through, but now isn't.
And what was it about the foundation's structure that was feeling that way?
It just I always have known that the body of work that I created in the movement of existence was going to be the thing that in some ways I was creating because the world needed it. And there's been a whole like gauntlet for me about creating that, like experiencing it firsthand so that it could be created not as an idea, but actually as like direct experience, as well as obviously my whole background in healthcare and meditation. And I have always felt and known that what I'm going to do and where my real turn on is not in that body of work. And it's not because I don't love what I created in the movement of existence, because it feels incredibly like accurate and missing in the world and valuable. And I have nourished it with 1,000 different angles. And so it feels quite complete for what it is. It doesn't mean it won't keep building, but it feels like it's quite complete. And there's this other place to play that really is about the way I want to be playing. And that represents this brand that's been coming through that I'm calling Anthem. Anthem is really about the full expression of you in your life, in every part of your life. And that isn't a developed expression. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go get to be a better person and express myself. This is uninhibited, unrestricted, unrehearsed honesty. And it asks you to take off everything that you think is proper and right and good and that makes you something in order to actually carry and live love in every moment. It asks you to risk all the time. And not because you're getting stronger or becoming better, but because the nature of the game is the edge. And so Anthem is about playing the edges. And what's really juicy about that is that addiction is about playing the edges. And so Anthem is the antidote to addiction. If the movement of existence is the side that describes and explains and maps the two bodies, Anthem is the expression on the other side of the coin of addiction. And we have a deep misunderstanding about what addiction is, how to address it, and where it even lives within us. And if anybody knows me for 5 seconds and knows my history in healthcare and my history treating eating disorders and innovating in that world, They know that I have been enraged and incensed for over 20 years at the conversations around addictions and specifically around eating disorders because they are harmful and they're told by really good people. So it's not that these are not good people doing this. It's that we are missing a critical understanding in our society about power and about energy and about existence and about addiction itself and what that represents around the suffocation and suppression of widespread power. Anthem is about bringing that power back into motion, not in one body, but in millions of bodies. That is the love song. And so this new version of this not is a course, but is more of like a incubator, exchange, dance party. It's definitely not a container. It's an experience. It's an experience. It's that you're coming to experience like yourself. So I'm not giving you an experience. It's about conveying the field and the game board and the game so that you can have your own experience, the experience you really want to be having, not the one you've learned to settle for. The systems change we're talking about is often just rearranging the furniture, but not really touching aliveness as the central commodity in the room. It's still being seconded. And so all of that I'll be speaking about over and over again in many different ways. And when I think about the conversations about spiritual emergence and awakening, there's a whole other piece there about getting stuck in a chronic dark night or like not finishing your awakening because the convergence of these two bodies of reality really do bring together two completely different levels of physics. And so you have to know how to navigate not just the psychology or orientation or perceptual changes in that, but the actual physics changes in that. And I haven't met very many people who know how to get through that full arc. Most people make it through a piece of it, and then they bring in some sort of compensatory structure to make it good enough. This is exactly what happens in addictions and eating disorders too, is you make it kind of part way and it's like, oh, there's nowhere else to go. No one's showing you that there's a world beyond these things. And so this body of work is about the whole fucking world that exists beyond this narrow shit that we are thinking is reality. When I listen to the field and when I am really deep with the field, it appears to me and I experience it as two things that are both the same. One is that it feels like an ocean with many different waveforms. And the other is that it is a symphony. And I have experienced that each one of us has our own specific signature and tone within that symphony. And that it is really for us to come here and play that music. And that music is born so deeply out of a devotion to love. And not love as a feeling, because that is like really the small version of love. And what we usually think about as love, and we often think about that as being kind of like weak or episodic. But the kind of love that I'm talking to is a force. It's actually raw power. And this is not about like being in love. This is about pure desire. This is about pure creation coming through. This is about not desire as wanting something, but the actual fire of desire, illuminating and lighting up what wants to be touched in you, what you want to touch, what your muses are. And so for the last 10 years, I have been really aware that I have held a frequency of love in the face of quite a lot of pushback that has been coming from multiple sources that want me to abandon my post of holding on to love. and come into a reality frame that is about war making, about abuse, about addiction, about self-abandonment. And it's taken me on quite the journey, but I've always stayed really close to love because it was the one thing I knew I could trust. And I have discovered that love is not just a force, it's an architect. It is what orders creation. It is what builds new things. It's what creates the blueprints for new things. So this experience is now going to bring together these two things that I've been watching for like the last number of years. Anthem will be talking a lot about what love is and what love isn't. And it'll be talking a lot about authority and authorship and will and purpose, but in the way that they align with actual creation and energetics, not in the way that we've interpreted them to fit our human ideas of what we want. And the movement of existence part of it is absolutely the foundation's modules. And the conversations that I have had about the blueprints of reality, the way that addiction is widespread, the way that we navigate between these two bodies of reality, one that I call the adaptive body and one that is just this high art making field that is existence itself. And how our reality has been structured to oppress that field, to bury that field, to threaten that field into a kind of submission or surrender that is actually a lie. And how, because we're so oriented towards that view of reality implicitly, that when the real thing is there, we don't even know how to behave with it. We don't even know how to be with love when love is present. And so there's a whole framework about that that I've spent the last 7 years in every TJ Maxx in the country recording content about. And so there is so much content to this, and I feel like it now holds itself with so much integrity. And so that is the body of work that helps people orient to every phenomena they're experiencing in reality and figure out how they can move from addiction to actually like embodying existence. And so there's procedures, there's phases, there's all sorts of stuff. And for me, I am deeply interested in what happens when you are embodying existence, how it wants to play, how I want to play, and the kinds of fields that come through that are full of possibility. And what happens when you put a group of people together that are playing at that level and they're that naked and they're that honest and they get to create shit in real time with each other. And it's not prescribed, and it's not about the future, and it's not about making something happen so that you can make money off of it. It has absolutely nothing attached to it except for the signal and the fire of creation. It's just doing it for the sake of the lovemaking that is what that is.
And if someone is curious to attend this experience, what would they get out of it? What would that journey be for them?
I mean, I think that one of the things I really appreciate about my work is that everybody's journey is different. And I could have 60 people in a room and support all of them in basically clarifying their own conversation with themselves so that whatever journey is theirs to have, they're having it in that clarified space rather than having it in the muddiness of all of the conversations we have out there that I think are largely a distraction from this. You know, we have 1,000 conversations about mental health, about trauma, about modernism, about systems change, about the patriarchy. And many of these conversations, you know, there's pieces of them that touch things, of course, that have a lot of merit. But most of them are really places where we can go and feel a kind of communion with other people because we feel so alone. And we want this kind of shared conversation because we feel so alone. But most of them really have nothing to do with living from existence. They have to do with like living in a world that is trapped between two bodies and uncertain about how to order it properly. And so there's a big conversation that my work really desires to have about correcting the collective conversation. And so I feel like anybody who comes to this experience over the summer is going to have a big correction of view and a big correction of aim, which means that essentially any parts of your life, from your work to your personal life to what you desire, what your dreams are about, your family life, whatever it will all be touched by this work because the way that we orient towards one thing is essentially the way we orient towards everything. And the places that we're escaping are all everywhere. And the places that we're compensating are all everywhere. And so the idea here is really to take people out of that collective compensation and bring them squarely in the center of their own field of existence and have them not leave that seat because you're not supposed to leave that seat. Once you get there, you're supposed to sit there and hold the tension if what you want to occur is not on the table. So there's a whole clearing that will happen in here. And of course, there will also be like skill sets for meditations and clearings and things like that that will support like decrease of inflammation. Um, and I think again, this year, I really intend for this to create a lot of intimacy. So for people to really be working in these small cohorts and get to know each other through this work and through showing up in a different way, like not showing up in the familiar defensive structures, but really coming in clean and endeavoring to pause until that truth is really present.